Hello, this is just a short video for the instructions for part 2 for your semester-long project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to post it in the part 2 instructions. As always, you're welcome to post questions in a discussion, FAQ. I'm looking at those about once a day. Sometimes I'll go 2 days, but I will get back to you as soon as possible. As always, you can send me a message, and I normally respond to those fairly quickly. So you did your part 1, it got accepted. I'm okay with the questions, with the poll that you're going to copy. And as you remember, the instructions for the project, is that you have to copy 3 to 6 questions from a nationally done poll. And so at this point in time, now you have to create the survey. You have to create the tool that you're going to use to administer the question to your participants. And so what you're going to use, or what we're going to use, is Google Forms. So then what I do here is I simply just go, Google Forms. And if I click on it, it's going to ask me, do you have a personal Google Form account or business one? And so obviously we're going to go with the personal one. And so your PHSE student email is Gmail based. So when you log into it, you'll have access to this suite of applications. What we're going to be using obviously is Google Forms. So when you do that, just make sure that you choose Google Forms, because otherwise it'll take you to either your Drive or Google Docs or something like that, and we don't want that. And so obviously this is my personal Gmail, and when you go into Google Forms, you're not going to have all the things that I have here, because obviously I have copies and upon copies of surveys. So what you're going to do, if you remember, is that you have to ask about age, you have to ask about income, you have to ask about education level, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, but I have the questions in the poll that I'm going to show you. When you start, you don't have to start with blank, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the link to the Google form, which will allow you to edit it for yourself. Now, you have to be careful. Don't share it with me, because what happens is if you copy mine but you don't make it your own, and I happen to delete that particular link, your poll is going to disappear, and you're going to be upset and nervous and all that good stuff. So don't do that. Just create a copy, and I will show you guys how to do that, and then just make it your own, right? Save it on your Drive, on your cloud for Gmail. So if I was doing this from the beginning, I would click on blank, and it will give me a blank form to fill out or to complete. And so here I'm going to click on this copy. Now this is an actual survey that was done. I believe it might have been done in the summer by a student. So now the disclaimer is actually a pretty good thing. A lot of polls have this. This student in particular wanted to share this disclaimer with her participants, because sometimes people are afraid that if they put some information or they fill something out, that somehow the world is going to know that it was them. And so it's a good thing to do. You don't have to do it. It's just a nice touch to your poll. So the first question that you're going to ask is age. And so age is a quantitative variable. We want it to be open-ended. And the reason being is that because if I put classes, for example, if I put something from 16 to 19 and then 20 to 22, what's going to happen is that that's no longer quantitative. Now it becomes a qualitative variable, and finding the mean of the age of my participants makes no sense because I have a qualitative variable. So you want this to be open-ended. Now, when you copy this poll, these questions are going to be done for you already, so you don't have to recreate these things. You just have to copy them and then add the questions that you're going to ask, and then you're good to go. So a lot of the work is already done for you. Now, sometimes this could be a touchy subject. I hate to say controversial, but we are asking gender. We're not asking sex. And so gender, there's a spectrum, and it is a scientifically agreed upon definition of gender. And so if for any reason you want to ask sex and not, go into these different gender types, then you have to be very specific that this is what you're asking. And so sex would be male, female, or prefer not to answer. If, I prefer that you copy this question, but I'm not making it mandatory. And so if you ask, and when you ask the gender question, you have to make sure that you put the categories. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of the genders, but these are the most common ones. And I believe that I've had every single one of these answered over the years when either student polls or just even within my own class when I show this to students. And so this will be the question. Now the next one is race, ethnicity. And so you can clearly see here that we have some of the most common ones, and we also have an option for other. And the reason is that some people do not necessarily identify as either white or black or Latino or Asian or Native American, or maybe a combination of them, or maybe something there you just don't like. So you can either put mixed or other. So the key to your poll is that you want to make sure that your participants have an opportunity to reply. So the more data you collect, the better it is for you. So don't make it so restrictive, right? When you create a poll, if you ever do this in the future, to where some of your participants are just going to be like, well, doesn't apply to me, so I'm not even going to answer. Let me keep scrolling down here. And then so provide a yearly estimate of your income. I got a question earlier from a student who said, was asking, what if I just ask teenagers if they don't have an income, can they list their parents' income? And so my answer to that was yes. And he also asked if it's going to affect his paper. And it's not, because your paper follows from the data that you collect. So you're going to analyze that data. So it's not, there's no before that, right? So that your people who are going to read your paper, mainly me, we don't have theoretically any knowledge of what happened before or what's other information. We just strictly on the analysis of your data. So one of the things that you can do with this question is you can go ahead and put what is your household income, right? And that way it'll cover everyone that lives in that particular home and what's the income of the household, whether or not they're over 18 or you have siblings living there or whatever. It's just household income. That way you don't get a bunch of zeros because even though it's not bad data, if you get a bunch of zeros, it sort of skews your data a little bit. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it kind of becomes difficult to do any analysis. Now, I don't require you to ask these, I believe there's two questions, the political identification and the religious identification questions. The reason these questions are good is that when you get to the probability section, you can actually figure out, let's just say, for example, you're doing gun policy, what percentage of your participants who identify as Democratic or members of the Democratic Party actually support, gun rights, or what percentage of the Republican participants who identify as Republican do not support gun rights. And those are the fascinating questions. Those are the interesting questions that hopefully you can get from your data. So you are welcome to ask the political identification question. And the reason being is that maybe your topic really applies to that. So the narrative in the United States could be that Democrats lean one way, Republicans lean one way, and then you can sort of come up and say, hey, my poll didn't quite fit that narrative. The next one is religious identification. Now, just real quick, Protestant, Roman Catholic, Mormon, those are all Orthodox also. Those are all Christian. They all fall under the Christian umbrella. And so then, of course, you have, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and all these other ones. And so, again, the same thing applies with the political identification. Do people who identify as Christian, do they support gun rights, right? Do they not support gun rights? So it's a good question to ask. It's not required, but it's a good one. Level of education. This is actually a pretty decent list, and so you're either less than high school. So if you're dual enrolled student, you'll actually be less than high school because you haven't graduated high school. If you're a regular student at PHSC, then obviously that person would say, I'm a high school graduate, some college. And so a lot of times this is really up to the participant to answer this question. And so here we get to one of the questions that this particular student copied from the actual poll. And so I'm going to sort of end this particular video at this point in time. And then the next video, I'm going to show you how to create a question. So how to delete a question that's, from this particular survey and then put in your own question. So I'll do that and I'll also post that. Thank you.